I'm a retired law enforcement officer with well over 30 years of experience, both patrol and investigations. I've been trained in the detection and response to criminal activity by canines, tracking and trailing humans or animals, evidence collection / preservation and processing, crime scene investigation, and have been trained to shoot with expert precision. I am also a hunter, both bow and gun. I know my way around the woods, swamps, or whatever terrain you want to call it. I live in Louisiana, about 30 miles north of New Orleans, on the west bank of Mississippi. I've lived in the general area since 1980, and I know the woods at night like a rat knows a cheese factory. I'm telling you all of this to let you know that I'm not some armchair Bigfoot hunter. I've been out there looking for these things my whole life. The other night was no different than any other night that I go out on the property with our canines. We have a large piece of land with an old house, barn, and pond. We board dogs there for folks that are out of town or going to be gone for a while. It is our job to feed and care for the dogs as if they were our very own. We closed up the kennels at about 10 p.m. since we didn't have any more dogs left to board, but we still had work to do outside before calling it a night. So I decided, let's take the dogs out one more time before calling it a night. We walked around outside with the dogs for about 20 minutes, then decided to head back inside since it was starting to get pretty late. As I'm walking through the old house heading towards our office, where all of our equipment is located, which by the way is in the basement, I hear this muffled growl coming from the pond area on our property. It was very close but sounded muffled as if behind something. I stopped, looked around with my flashlight, but could not see anything. I told my canine handler to let the dogs out since they don't like being in the house. I then asked them if they had heard that noise, and what do you think they said? They didn't say a word, just sat down looking at me as if to say, what are we going to do now? I put my hand on one of their shoulders, calmly told them to relax, and we're going to go upstairs, grab our pistols, come back down, then walk around the pond area with a flashlight. I told them if it's anything we need to worry about, they will let us know, but if not, they would just sit there like they're doing now. So up the stairs we went, grabbed our pistols, came back down, and walked out on the front porch, looking for whatever made the noise, but did not see anything or anyone. So I told my canine handler to let the dogs out, and we would walk around behind the house where I heard the noise coming from. We walked past our work office / area with all of our equipment in it, headed towards a gate that leads into a small pasture and meadow area with trees on both sides of the fence line. As we're walking through the gate, one of my canines is on my right side, sniffing the ground. The other is next to his handler on my left side. We now hear this loud growl coming from the tree line on our right. I immediately stop, look in that direction with my flashlight, but I still can't see anything. So I tell my handler to let the dogs out while they're barking and lunging towards whatever it is. Then told him to get his pistol out just in case. The dogs were going nuts, trying to get at whatever was in those trees, but wouldn't leave their handlers, which meant they were seeing something I was not. That's when I looked at my canine handler and said, "Let's get out of here. Whatever this is bigger than us." We turned around, ran back through that gate to the front porch where we let our dogs out one more time while we got our pistols ready, just in case, but nothing came near us or made another noise. I've never heard anything like what I heard the other night before in my life. This wasn't some deer or coyote or anything else you might typically hear on any other night. I have heard every kind of animal that could possibly roam the woods at night. This wasn't one of them. So after letting our dogs out for what seemed like forever, we decided to head back inside since it was getting late again. but before doing so, I told my handler, "Let's shine some light over there." I pointed towards the area where I heard that growl, and he just said, "I don't see anything." I told him to hold his flashlight up higher, and when he did, that's when we both saw this big black thing walk behind a tree. We looked at each other like, what was that? My handler has spent more time in these woods than me, but even he had never seen anything like that. I am telling you this because I know that whatever it was last night, it was certainly not afraid of us or our canines. It let our dogs out and didn't even make a sound until we got close to where it was, which meant it knew we were coming and wanted us to know it was there. We've had a coyote come into the barn looking for food before, but they ran when my canines would bark at them, so I know this was not a coyote. I've also had deer come into the barn looking for food, but same thing. After walking around in these woods, swamps, and fields, nothing really scares me anymore. But after what happened this night, whatever this was, I'm telling you that something is going on there that we don't fully understand. I've been an avid outdoorsman for most of my life. I grew up in the woods of northern New Jersey and spent most of my youth hunting, fishing, and camping. I served 8 years in the Army as a military policeman, then went to work for TSA at Newark Airport after that. I was always told growing up by my father and grandfather that if you see something scary, don't be afraid. They're not there to hurt you. The things only come around when someone in the family is going to die, such as an entity. Of course, I never believed them, but after seeing what I saw, I'm starting to believe them now. I live on Long Island. I have a small cabin in upstate New York, about an hour from where I work actually, which is only about 45 minutes, give or take, from the cabin. My wife and kids do not like the area I have the cabin in, so I never really go up there. But I try to go up there by myself or with friends a few times when I can, just to get away from everything, from the noise and complications and problems of life, and relax. I'm a big guy, and I like to be alone when I'm at my cabin, which is surrounded by about 10 acres of woods. It's actually not far from a small town, so people do hike, hunt, and fish around there, but it still is very secluded because of all the trees. I went up to my cabin just last weekend, around 11 p.m. Now, I'm a night owl, so that is my prime time to go up there and unwind. That's when everything happened. I was sitting on the back porch, which is off of the kitchen area, drinking some coffee. Yes, I drink coffee late at night to unwind, just listening to some Eric Clapton on my phone. It was very dark out. There was overcast with no moon or stars shining, at least that were not visible. There are a few small lights outside my cabin, but they do not light up the area enough for me to see more than 10 feet in front of me. I was sitting there for about 30 minutes when all of a sudden, from behind my cabin to the left, I hear this deep noise, a noise that I could feel. My first inkling was that somebody had broken into the cabin because the back door is glass and you can see right through it from outside. But there were no lights on inside or out, so I could not see anything yet. I grabbed my light off the table next to me, turned off my music, and listened for any other sounds around me, but I did not hear anything else at the time. I decided to go out to the front door and walk around back to see if I can find out what it was that made that loud noise. As I walked into the living room area of my cabin, I saw 2 glowing eyes staring at me through the glass on the door. This freaked me out because, well, it was dark out. I thought maybe it was a deer or something looking in at me. I opened the door, shined my flashlight down towards where I heard the noise coming from, but I didn't see anything. I walked around to the back of my cabin, still did not see anything. But as soon as I shined my flashlight towards where I heard the noise, these two glowing eyes stared right back at me from about 10 feet away in a patch of grass. The creature stood up, taller than me by at least a foot or more. It had long black hair all over its body and the face that resembled a wolf, with sharper teeth, of course. I have a .40 caliber pistol on my hip, but because this thing was so close to me, I didn't want to try and shoot it with the risk of it hitting myself if I missed. So I took out my knife that was strapped to my leg and I yelled at it, saying, "Get away from me!" It looked like it wanted to come after me, so I had no choice but to charge at it. I know, not one of my better moments. When I got within 5 feet of this thing, whatever it was seemed to evaporate into a mist. I was shocked, scared. I fled back to the cabin, locking every door, sitting inside listening for any sounds outside, not sure what had just happened. The next morning, I somehow managed to stay awake all night, looking for anything. The next morning, once the sun rose, I went out around my cabin looking for tracks or anything that would tell me what this thing was, but there were none. All I could think of last night after it happened was Dogman, because of how tall it was compared to me, even though I'm 6'1". The only reason I'm talking about this is because of your stories and experiences you've posted over the years. I believe what my grandfather and father told me about the family secret being real was after seeing what I saw. The secret being that, like I told you, my families see entities, and when we do, they're usually seen as an omen. I hope that doesn't mean bad things for me. For the record, I consider myself a fairly big guy. 6'2", 250 pounds, a lot of muscle. I was raised on a farm. I know my way around animals, and especially goats. When I was younger, I used to ride my bike with it loaded down with firewood for my family's wood-burning stove. This was about 8 miles one way, and I would do this every weekend during the winter. But keep in mind, it wasn't that bad, so it's not like I'm riding my bike in 5 feet of snow. The trip took me along a long, winding country road where there were many farms. One particular goat farm always had mean goats that would chase me and try to headbutt me as I rode by. One day, I had enough of their crap and decided to take matters into my own hands. On my way home with a load full of wood, I stopped at the goat farm to let them have it, with some well-placed kicks for my steel-toed boots. After that beating, they never bothered me again. I bring this up because what happened next was strange, and it haunted me for years. A few months after the goat incident, I was out with my father, and we were hunting for wild turkey. We walked into a patch of forest that had this old abandoned trailer home on it. The place was covered in graffiti, trash everywhere. As we were leaving, I heard some noises coming from the neighboring field where there were several goats grazing, and it sounded like somebody was torturing them by how loud and distressed they were screaming. Then this huge buck came running at me, stopping right at the edge of the woods, glaring at me. I was confused because this buck looked like a giant goat with horns. It stood on its hind legs, which were more like front legs of an animal than human arms, and he had these yellow eyes that just glared at me. Then it bolted into the field, speed ahead as if to chase off those goats. I've never seen anything like this before or since, but there's definitely some strange stuff down here in southern Ohio.